Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's jump into a wild tale of a GM who got shortchanged after boosting sales for an ice cream shop, then found sweet revenge. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Boss went back on their word, manager backstabbed me, so I helped get their store shut down. A few years ago, I got hired on as a general manager for a small corporate chain specializing in ice cream. They weren't doing well as the pandemic had just ended and they needed someone to boost their sales. I was hired on with the promise that once I doubled the sales of the store, I'd get a substantial pay raise. I hit that goal 5 months into the job. During my 6-month evaluation, I was given a small raise, not even half of what I'd been promised. I was told that the store was still catching up, so they couldn't afford the raise they'd previously quoted to me. If the store continued on its upward track, I'd get my raise at my 1-year evaluation. Yeah, no. I started looking for other jobs and stopped going above and beyond in my duties. The assistant manager I'd hired noticed and took up the mantle, secretly going to my boss to get my job. After a month, it worked. They were going to demote me and promote her to GM before I quit. A few months later, a friend sent me a screenshot of a post on Facebook where a girl was warning people not to work at that shop because they won't pay you. I reached out to her, found out she hadn't been paid for a week's worth of work, and the GM, my old AM, wouldn't do anything about it. The corporate number wasn't publicly listed, but I still had it saved in some emails, so I gave it to her and told her she ought to let corporate know about what's going on in that store. The store was shut down by the end of the next week. It was closed for a month before having a grand reopening with new owners and management. I got revenge in a two birds, one stone kind of way. Wow, amazing revenge. Props to you for sticking up for yourself and those who were mistreated. And our second story. You can kick me out over it. Well, if you insist. About a year ago, I had a terrible housemate and a good housemate. Let's call the bad one B and the other housemate OH. Here's an abbreviated list of how B was bad. 1, she had a little dog who would bark at everything. A door in the house opened, knocking sound, doorbell. If I came home later than 10 p.m., etc., it was a small dog and the barks were ear-piercing. 2, she was possessive of space. She moved in after I'd been there for over a year, but she claimed whatever space she was in, like if she was cooking, she would get irritated if we went into the living room or kitchen area because she wanted to be alone. 3, she was angry. She would write scathing texts. One even made me fear for my life about little things. I was honestly terrified of her, what she might do. 4, she played piano all the time, literally every day. I asked her once if she could play using headphones, not to stop to play with headphones, because I needed some more sleep. She told me that playing piano was her thing, and I had known about it when she moved in, so I would have to deal with it. 5, she went to bed at 7 or 8 p.m. and expected absolute quiet after that, but would wake up and play piano at 6 a.m. without consideration for our needs. 6, she smoked in her room all day, every day, even after I specifically told her not to. She could smoke outside, I just didn't want to get in trouble with the landlords. 7, she wouldn't clean. She said she couldn't touch other people's dishes, OCD, and that she would clean all of hers, that's fine, except she wouldn't always do her dishes. I ended up doing them often. She would also freak out if there was a single dish in the sink. She wouldn't put dishes away, not once. She complained about things being messy but wouldn't clean them, like mopping the floor or vacuuming up her dog's hair. There's more than the above, but this thing is already going to be way too long. B had been living with me in OH for about 8 months when I ran out of patience. I asked her to take out the recycling as she hadn't done it in 6 weeks. I knew it was 6 weeks because it had been since before she went away for spring break, and it was the end of April when I texted her. Note, I'm disabled, so taking out the recycling can be taxing, especially since she would drink 3 glass bottles of beer or more a day. She said she didn't put them in the recycling bin, but I could literally see them on top. Below is a paraphrasing of our exchange, meaning I was reading the exact texts and just cutting the fluff. Me. Can you please take out the recycling? B. Maybe you guys don't stack it right, so it's pretty gross. Me. All right, that's something you should have told us before now, but fine. You don't have to take out the recycling, just please don't put anything in there if you aren't going to take it out. Same goes for the trash. Like it or not, what you put in adds to it, and it can be painful for me to do so. B. I'm not putting anything in the trash or recycling. Lie. And I never even go out of my room. When I do put things in the trash, I make sure it's compressed. True. And clean. Not true. Also, there are too many standards I hold that are being unmet to mention them all, so I cope how I can. I do plenty of washing. Not true. I've put a bag in the recycling a couple of times, but no one takes the hint. What? She then went on a rant about finals and OH bringing guests, causing her stress. Me. I know it's been 6 weeks because, explanation, what standards aren't being met? You need to tell us these things. Like with the bags, I can't read your mind. I understand finals are stressful, but I can't do everything, and if you don't like the guests, you have to talk to OH about it. I can't stop her. B. I don't care if it's been 6 weeks, and like I said, I don't put much in there, which you should know. When I took out the trash that day, there were 6 beer bottles visible on top, let alone what was under everything else. I was only telling you why I was frustrated. I'm just trying to tough it out until I'm gone in 2 weeks, summer vacation, and I'm not going to take it out, so there's that. You could kick me out over it, but I'm not touching that. I honestly hadn't thought about kicking her out until that moment. I was honestly looking for other places to live. OH was moving out, so I was going to leave B with the job of replacing both of us, as she refused to help find a new housemate to fill for OH, but she still wanted to vet all potential people. I waited 1 hour, talked to some friends, talked to OH, talked to my mom, and really thought it over. I let myself calm down completely and considered all my options. Finally, I sent her this. Me. You know what, B? Fine. Be out by the end of May. You can keep the furniture that came with your room if you would like. She was furious, and she bitched me out about it over text for hours, but she couldn't do anything. She honestly hadn't thought I would kick her out, and she desperately tried to backtrack. She was living there off the lease, illegally, and I had evidence of her crap roommate behavior through our text exchange. She effed me out of the last month's rent and left the room a mess, but she was gone by May 15th, and I haven't heard from her since. This is really satisfying. I'm glad things worked out for you. She totally broke rule number 1. You can't complain something's dirty if you don't clean. And our next story. Neighbor's pond flooding my property. When I first moved into my property just over a year ago, I was excited to have some space, fresh air, and a bit of land to work on my small farming projects. My neighbor, who moved in around the same time, seemed nice enough, and we'd had a couple of friendly conversations. His property shares a border with mine, separated by a pond that lies mostly on his land. Life was peaceful, at least for a while. A few months back, my neighbor decided to have his pond excavated, making it larger and deeper. At first, it didn't seem like a big deal, but as the project wrapped up, I noticed a worrying detail. The embankment that runs along our shared border is lower than the rest of the pond, including the new drainage pipe they installed. I pointed this out to him, and his response was dismissive. It's always been that way, and it's not lower. But it clearly was lower. After every heavy rain, the pond would overflow, not into the designated drainage area, but straight onto my property. The flooding from his pond streamed into my front pasture, which had thousands of dollars worth of hay and landscaping material stored there. Each time it rained, water would flow right through my land, washing away portions of my freshly laid driveway, leaving a mess that was costly to repair. I filmed the flooding, showing multiple angles where the water was rushing over my pasture. When I sent the videos to my neighbor, hoping we could work something out, he became evasive. Suddenly, he was too busy to respond, and his line of defense was the same. It's always been like this. The contractor who did the pond work wasn't any better. He flat out refused to address the issue unless my neighbor and I could agree on who was going to pay to fix the problem. But why should I pay to fix his mistake? After a particularly heavy storm, the pond flooded worse than ever before. Water coursed over my driveway, washing away the gravel I'd just paid to have redone by the same contractor who was now refusing to take responsibility for the pond. My pasture was a swamp, my materials ruined. I was beyond frustrated, but I wasn't going to let this slide. The update. At this point, I knew I needed to take action. My friendly requests weren't getting anywhere, and the constant damage to my property was becoming too much. I contacted an environmental attorney who specialized in property drainage disputes. My attorney also helped me get a professional survey done, which showed that the embankment was in fact lower than the rest of the pond's borders. We filed a lawsuit against both my neighbor and the contractor for negligence and property damage. In court, my neighbor tried to play the "it's always been like this" card, but the survey and the footage I'd taken made it clear that the pond's overflow was a direct result of their shoddy work. The contractor also tried to pass the blame, but ultimately the court found them both responsible for the mess they'd caused on my property. The ruling was in my favor. The neighbor and the contractor were ordered to cover the cost of repairing the embankment to the appropriate height and to install a proper drainage system that wouldn't flood my land anymore. On top of that, they were required to reimburse me for the damage to my driveway, hay, and landscaping materials. It was a long battle, but standing my ground paid off. My land's no longer a swamp after every rainstorm. The best part? My neighbor now has to deal with the financial consequences of not listening when I first brought the issue up, and I'm happily going about my business, knowing that my property is finally safe from their negligence. And our last story. HOA effed up. Owners now harassing a neighbor. My sister lives adjacent to a condo complex. She was having a tree removed on her property. The HOA president came over to make sure they weren't cutting down any trees owned by the HOA. Tree guys show him the land survey showing tree is definitely cis. But he then mentions the HOA tree bordering cis property that is dead and should be taken down. HOA president says he'll discuss with our board. Over next several months, sis and brother-in-law follow up with HOA board regarding this tree and what they plan on doing. They swear their own tree guy said the tree's fine. Color everyone shocked when a storm comes through, crushes sis's fire pit, breaks her fence, cracks her stamped concrete pool deck, goes into her pool, breaks the granite on her outdoor kitchen, and kills her Roomba-esque pool vacuum. State law says that sis insurance is responsible, so she ends up paying her $1,000 deductible and insurance pays the $60,000 in damage to the yard. Insurance then went after HOA using all the back and forth emails brother-in-law kept as evidence that HOA had constructive notice about tree. HOA insurance makes mistake of fighting them, goes to court and loses. So now they have to pay sis $1,000, her insurance $60,000, and court costs and lawyers. Needless to say, all homeowners are assessed a special assessment. Only bad part is they told the homeowners why there was an assessment, so now a few of the homeowners keep calling in noise complaints on sis every time nephew and his friends are playing in the pool or yard. Because the police have to come every time, and of course it's never loud, the last visit they encouraged sis to look into harassment charges. Why are they harassing her when they should be doing this to the board members? Jeez. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.